It's not leaping up, so why don't we launch in? We're gonna have some fun tonight. So, okay. Hi everybody. You're listening to a career advice webinar by the Royal Australian Chemical Institute, the professional association for chemists in Australia. I'm Dave Samet, coordinator of the RACI mentoring program. In this competitive market, even the smallest detail can make or break an application. Our panel of professionals, all of whom have extensive experience in recruitment, will be discussing the common and sometimes not so common mistakes that candidates make in their applications. We'll talk about the errors applicants make in their resume and cover letter, as well as ineffective job searching techniques and interview faux pas. We certainly welcome you to ask questions via the Q&A tab function where they can be voted up. Before we start this evening's panel session, we'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land on which we are meeting all around Australia. We recognise the elders, past, present and emerging, and also recognise their contributions as Australia's first scientists and engineers, building a healthy and safe community, what they've done and what we can still learn from their ways. We'd also like to thank the sponsors of the RACI Careers Development Program, DCS Technical, Envirolab and Laboratory Credit Union. So, welcome to our panellists this evening. We have Keely Munro, Principal Consultant in Science Area for Pearsall Kelly. And we have Patricia Rushton, the Senior HR Advisor for ALS Global, Australian Laboratory Services being one of or the biggest commercial laboratory organisation in Australia.
I'll take your word for it.
So the whole purpose of tonight is to have a little bit of fun, chat about the times when things have gone wrong and what we can learn from that. Keely, why don't you start with just a quick introduction? I mean, we hardly need to introduce both of you. Both of you are friends of the careers program and you've been involved in many things. But for those of you, we've got actually, I will say this, a lot of new names are participating tonight. So just if you can introduce yourself quickly and we'll go from there.
Sure, yes. So as Dave mentioned, I'm the Principal Consultant of Science for Pearsall Kelly, which is a recruitment agency. We used to be Kelly Scientific Resources. You may have known us through that arm of the business. So it's scientists recruiting scientists. So my background is chemistry, so I'm very passionate about helping young chemists to transition into the workplace. And yeah, I'm part of the RACI mentoring group, as well as being the president-elect of the RACI local branch in WA. And I'm just really happy to be here and share any kind of insights and advice that I can.
I didn't know that you were the president-elect.
Yes, I am.
Well, so well done you. When do you take office?
Next year.
Next year.
Yes.
Wow. Well done. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I can't top that because I'm not president of anything. But my name is Patricia, whatever you want to say, and I'm Senior HR Advisor for Australian Laboratory Services, Pty Limited. I look after WA, South Australia. Majority of my, what I look after is geochemistry. So we're looking at mineral resources, exploration samples. We do have environmental and tribology as well in Perth. So very busy times. We have lots of jobs if anybody's interested. And Keely's nodding away there because she's exactly the same boat as me. So great time to get into the scientific industry at this moment because it's just booming throughout the country. So you're in the right place. That's all.
Well, I was at Envirolab yesterday and the place was jumping.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Environmental, everything's going. Even just water testing, obviously with COVID testing, that's increased our environmental testing over in the eastern states. So it's just a really good time. If you're finishing your degree and you're looking for jobs, the world is your oyster at this moment.
Yeah, some good news to start the evening. All right, so to prize open that oyster, where would you like to start? Do you want to talk about the most memorable screw up that you've come across?
I've got one from a resume that was
Awesome.
Yeah, and I think to start with resumes, because that is your first impression. So anybody looking for a job, get it right first time. That's big, strong advice. But the one that really stood out for me was it was a receptionist position. It wasn't a scientific position. And it was somebody I would suggest straight out of school. And they were trying to show me their competency level in Excel, Word, Outlook. But instead of writing competent, they'd written incompetent. So they were incompetent in Excel and incompetent in Word and incompetent. And of course, it wouldn't spell check because the word is spelled correctly. It was just the wrong word to use. And I didn't actually, we didn't go forward with an interview. It wasn't the right person. But I did phone her up and I did say, look, you've spelt the word wrong. You put the word, spelt it right, but you've got the wrong word. So yeah, definitely saying a level of incompetence in everything that was displayed.
Oh, bless.
One that really stood up. Yeah, bless her. She was very, very grateful that I phoned her up and told her. Otherwise, she would have never got a job.
What about you, Keely?
Oh, so many stories to tell. I don't even know where to begin, but that's just reminded me as well. All the time, it seems, well, hopefully not all the time, but a lot of people that work in quality, so quality managers, quality control technicians, assurance, all of that. The number of times I've had them have the word quality spelled incorrectly, I couldn't even count it on my fingers. That's just crazy because their number one job is to ensure that they have good attention to detail and are very quality oriented. So I always just stick them to the back of the pile because they're clearly not the person that I'm looking for in those roles.
And ditto, the number of times I've seen attention to detail misspelled.
Yeah. That is a funny one, that, because it is like, if you can't spell attention to detail, you're not really paying attention to it.
No, exactly.
Yeah,
it's so many stories that I could share. I think one that happens quite, I think, sometimes, as a recruitment consultant, sometimes people don't think of it as still a formal interview, even though I've told them this is a formal interview. So the amount of times that people have turned up wearing like what is the Bali beer?
Bintang.
Yeah, like bintang tank tops or singlets, I think you call them in Australia. So wearing a singlet like that, the flip-flops, just really inappropriately dressed. And I always just kind of think, I have an email template that I send for all of my interviews, which states that it is a formal interview. And still I get, so many times I've seen just really inappropriately dressed individuals. So I think just remember, regardless of who you're meeting, if it's somebody that's going to help you in your career, if that's a recruitment consultant or the actual company, just remember that this is your kind of gatekeeper if it's recruitment, and you want to make a really good impression even with recruitment.
Yeah,
I think you should always dress for the job you want, irrelevant of, whether you're going for an interview and you want a job one day as, somebody senior, then dress professionally, dress in a business-like fashion. So don't sort of dress for, I'm going to the beach, dress for the job that you really want to be doing one day. And if that's a job where you wear a shirt and slacks or whatever you want to call them, you dress like that. And you give that image then.
Yeah.
That is the image that we get.
It's easy for blokes, pants and a shirt, maybe a jacket, right? That's that. But for women, it's so much harder. What do you, and certainly as a bloke, I have been in the situation where I'm interviewing a woman who is wearing something that, let's say it's immodest, and I am desperately uncomfortable, which is not a good position to be. So, that's what, but as a bloke, I can't give that feedback.
So any of the females on the call, just please avoid low-cut tops, please avoid short skirts. It's just not the right impression to be giving a future employer.
Yeah, well, you don't want me to not be willing to look in your direction. That's the problem.
Yeah.
So, coming back to applicant or to resumes and such, I've got to say the one that took my breath away, and I still I just can't let it go. It's about 3 years now. Was a guy who I had a standard job ad, in the thing to apply. Please email me here with your resume and cover letter. And he's texted me with, here's my LinkedIn address.
Ooh.
That was his entire application.
Yeah.
And I texted him back. I said, thank you for your interest. If you want to apply for the job, the instructions are in the ad. And he says, no, if you're interested, you'll look me up.
And I can imagine you didn't.
And I responded, well, I'm not interested. It's good to have self-confidence, but you can't be arrogant. Right?
No. And you've just reminded me as well. Many times, the point of the story is make sure that you name your documents properly, because the amount of times that I've opened up what is called a resume and seen like a power bill or seen water rates or something that was not related to a work resume at all. I couldn't count the number of times. I've literally gone through tens of thousands of resumes in 7 years that I've worked in this job. And it's so many times I've seen that. So just make sure that you're naming things properly so that you're attaching the correct documents when you're applying for a job as well. And
on that note, the most memorable email address you've seen?
Oh.
I can still remember mine, hornydog64@hotmail.
Oh, goodness.
I think I've had Jesus loves me or something, or that was not that there's anything wrong with it, but it was just, you just see some weird and wonderful ones. And I think a professional email, and don't use the one. My daughter's, for example, was, I'm sure I'm allowed to say this, Captain Craphead, when she was younger. And I said to her when she started to go for jobs, and she ended up working in a recruitment agency, ironically. And I said to her, please change your email address before you start applying for jobs. And she said, of course I will, Mum. But the amount of people who don't sort of take that advice and just continue with something weird and wonderful, and it does put you off. It shouldn't do, but and sometimes it's just quirky, and therefore you say a bit of personality, but just be aware of the impression you're giving. One thing with the cover letter as well that I've seen a number of times is people have applied for a job with us, for example, as ALS, and then the cover letter says, I'm looking, for a position in, and that's not our industry. I'm looking for, a position in a vet or whatever it was. And that tells us that it's just that attention to detail. Not a big thing, but number one, it tells me that you are looking into other industries, and therefore, do you really want to come and work with us? Or are you just, looking for any job? But as well, it's that attention to detail. So always sort of change your cover letter, make sure it's appropriate for the job that you're sending, and it's not the one that you just sent recently, which was for a completely different industry, because that makes me go flight risk straight away.
Oh, absolutely. But of course, conversely, as the owner of a small business, I've got less than 10 employees, it drives me nuts when somebody says, my career ambition is to work for you, or my career ambition is to work for, no, it's not. Well, maybe it is, but then you have incredibly limited ambition. Look, basically you're saying, I'm going to lie to you. It might be a white lie, it might be a nice lie, but it's still a lie. And of course, the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. If you start with a lie, you're going to keep lying to me.
And that's another thing, lying on resumes. If I see somebody who has maybe been very young and said that they were an assistant manager somewhere, and it's actually, it just reminded me, I had one who said she was an assistant manager at the newsagents that was actually in my suburb. Now, I know the people in that newsagents, and there is no way she was ever assistant manager, because I've been going there for the last, 15 years, for example. So that was a sort of an out and out, well, you've made that one up then, because the owners work there. They're not going to have an 18-year-old assistant manager. When the owners work there, the son worked there, the daughter worked there as well. So again, just sort of padding out. We kind of do expect it, and we know when you are padding it out. Occasionally it's true, but a lot of times we will sort of put a question mark and say, were you really, or we'd rather you say I worked there, I was, and occasionally I was given extra duties, that type of thing. We don't expect you to be a manager at the age of 18 and run whole KFC. And that's not an expectation.
By the same superlatives, I'm extremely competent or extremely skilled at something, or I'm extremely experienced at something that you've learned in a lab at university. Those superlatives do drive me nuts.
I think when you do the summary, you sort of do a summary at the beginning of your resume, and again, somebody will say lots of experience with this, what they copied from the ad, and then when I go down to what they've done, they've maybe been at university and that's all, and it's like, well, how much experience do you really have in running an ICP, when in fact you've probably, you maybe have used it a few times, but certainly experienced and competent. It takes you 6 months to be experienced and competent, and the rest. It
takes 6 months to be competent. It takes years to be experienced.
Excellent. So don't sort of over pad. we expect you to not have a lot of experience. We expect you to not have reached the giddying heights of management. You don't need to pretend you have to impress us.
Yeah. So your most memorable lie, Keely?
Yeah, it was actually a reference check. So it was somebody that had given me a false reference, referee details. And so I had called and done the reference check. And my process is to always get a work email following with the referee and follow up with an email to ensure that I had spoken who I was supposed to have been speaking with.
Oh, wow.
And so I'd had a full reference, gotten all of the information. Great, sounded wonderful. Followed up with the email to the company address, and I got a response from the real person saying, we didn't speak today. The person that hasn't worked for my company, So if I hadn't done that follow-up that I do as part of my process, I wouldn't have known. And when I called the number back, it was the candidate. He had 2 telephone numbers, and he had given his own reference check on the phone. So don't lie.
That's breathtaking.
I know.
Wow.
You give somebody else, you sort of get a friend to do it.
A friend or something.
Yeah. Wow. To do your own.
Yeah.
I mean, I did that when my son talked to the tooth fairy, but
Wow.
Couldn't believe it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's amazing. What about white lies? I mean, so I had a candidate once, he was your classic. He'd come from the subcontinent, he'd gone to New Zealand, he'd done a PhD. He'd, after his 3 years in New Zealand, he'd got his New Zealand citizenship and jumped on the first plane to Australia, right? Classic, lots and lots and lots of people do that. Got to Australia and found that his PhD was hurting his chances, that people didn't want PhDs, as can happen, doesn't always. And so he lied on his resume, and so I interviewed, and it didn't all stack up until finally he admitted he'd lied, that he was actually more qualified than he said he was. And I, as the recruitment consultant, said, I'm sorry, I have to stop the interview here. I can't put you forward for this position because you lied. And he was crying in my office. And I got it. I understood why he'd done it, but he'd done it nonetheless.
Mm.
Have you guys been in that similar situation?
Yeah, I have, definitely, with the PhD omitted, and if things that were being said, it really stacked up that it sounded like they had studied a PhD and asked the question, oh no, didn't, but then later admitted that yes, they had. And yeah, if somebody has actually blatantly lied when I've asked the question, I wouldn't pursue it any further. I had it as well once. This was before COVID happened, but I was speaking to a candidate and I had invited them in for an interview, and they said, oh, I can't make it in. And this is after we had discussed where he was living, and he had told me he was living in Perth. And then when I had invited him for an interview, he said, oh, I'm going to need a little bit longer. And I kept probing and probing, and it turned out he was actually based in the eastern states, but just really, was really struggling to get a job. But the fact that he had lied to me, that just cut his chances altogether, because as soon as somebody tells me a lie, I want to ask them straight out. It just doesn't sit with me.
Well, it's not even the ethical issue of it. I mean, it's bad enough, but my reputation is on the line here. I can't proceed, even if I love the person and want to, I can't proceed. So there's always that. Have you? What's your most memorable lie, Patricia?
I can't. Gosh, I can't think of any, to be honest. Okay. Do I get lots of honest people, or maybe the lies were so insignificant?
I do love the one that I read the other day. It said nobody's perfect except on their resume.
Yeah. No, I think just the probably the one who said she'd work. She was assistant manager. I think that was the only one that stuck out that I sort of caught. We've one in the eastern states at the moment who's not struggling to produce a certificate for the degree, and they're sort of keep saying, oh no, I'll get it, and the university seem to have it missing in action, which again suggests this person's lied about the degree. So it's
yes and no. It took me about 8 weeks to get a copy of my.
Yeah. Oh, I think we're talking months.
All
I think
right.
we're talking 8 months. And the university doesn't, you can go and look, and the university doesn't seem to have heard of it. So I think that one is a definite. But
so circling back to that issue of referees, then, I guess the obvious piece of advice and the obvious failure that I've encountered again and again is they haven't called their their referee ahead of time. So you call the referee, and the first thing they go, "Oh, who? Oh, yeah, I think I worked with them a few years ago." That's obviously bad.
Yeah.
But when you take it one step beyond that common mistake, what's the next level mistake with referees?
Putting in a referee who's going to give you a bad reference. And it's amazing how many people do. I phoned somebody up and they've gone, and it's like, wow, why did you put this person down? And that to me shows a lack of sort of understanding of the impact you had at that workplace, that you confidently put this person down and this person's actually gone, I wouldn't hire them. So you've not realized the impact, the impact of your behavior at work or your work ethic or whatever it was. You've gone away from that place thinking, I'm brilliant. They loved me, when in fact they haven't. So that comes down to an awareness of when you are in a job, and even if it's only your KFC and the job that you're doing just to put you through university, make sure you have a good impression there, because a lack of a reference is one that gives us red flags. Lack of references, if you've been working up till recently in KFC, for example, and you haven't put them down as a reference, that's a big red flag for us. That's why can't we get a reference from there? So always, do your best at no matter what job you do. Your first job, make sure you do your best, because that will follow you everywhere if you're not careful. Because sometimes
with the qualifier that many times they can't give you a reference from the job you're currently in.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. But it's maybe not current, but maybe if there's a big gap between reference and it's been a few years, and the last reference was, 5 years ago, and you've had many jobs since then. That's probably doesn't happen as much with people who are at uni, because they're usually younger. There's less of that history, but it certainly raises a red flag for somebody who's been in any industry for a while, not to have any references to show for a few jobs.
I certainly had an interesting one a couple of years ago. I had a guy, loved him, thought he was fabulous, just did the reference checks as a ticking the box exercise. His referee thought he was fabulous, talked him up, and then he says, "Oh, but you do have to check his work because he does make a lot of mistakes." And that was it. That cruelled the job for that one statement. So, sometimes you've got to be quite careful of what your referee might say. Referee loved him, but...
Yeah, he never turns up, but he's lovely when he does. And we're really, really good at reading between the lines as well. So even if you kind of prime somebody or somebody's, oh yeah, I'll give you a good reference. We're very good at sort of picking up on their little white lies, which people do. So we can very easily pick up on something. And the biggest question we ask is, would you employ this person again? And if there's a little bit of a pause, that might be enough of a red flag for us.
Yeah. I will say though, when I call a referee, the thing that I love to hear is, yes, this candidate is really excited about this position. They called me, told me all about it, and this is why I think they're a good fit. Right?
Yeah.
That's the magic referee.
That is good. That is actually good advice to anybody on this call. Is enthused towards your referee, because they're going to give you that good feedback then.
So what's your feeling about to whom it may concern?
Okay.
You're all right with that? See, for me, my name is on every job ad that I ever put out, and yet 50% of them will come in as to whom it may concern, and it drives me nuts.
Yeah.
Mine's not research, on. So. Yeah. If you know the person and it's been listed, then definitely use their name. But yeah, I think if you don't know, which in vast majority you wouldn't know who's advertising, who the right person's directed to, I think in that instance, to whom it may concern, I prefer that to dear sir or madam. I much prefer to whom it may concern. But yeah.
Because that's binary and exclusionary in the modern era, is that?
Yes.
right? Dear sir, madam, or other.
But then we're just maybe trying to be too politically correct. It may concern, I think, works well. Or, dear hiring committee, or, something, or dear hiring manager, something like that, that is quite generic.
Yeah. But a big standout for me would be somebody who's done enough research to find out what my name is. That would really stand out, because I wouldn't expect you to. The job is pretty generic. You just apply through Seek. But for you to have actually phoned the company up and said, what's your HR person called? And put my name on it, wow, that would put you to the definitely to the top of the tree. So
yeah. Of course, I also get a lot, particularly.
Sorry, I was just going to say, can I answer Sarah McCabe, her question out there? She said, is it creepy to LinkedIn stock to find out who the job is meant to be going to? I think the problem with that is you could be wrong. It could be that you think the lab supervisor is one, but maybe it's Pat that's running her eyes over it as the HR manager. So it's best not to just guess who the person is. It's better to use a generic aspect.
Yeah, absolutely. And while we're answering questions from the floor, which we should do because they're starting to come in, if you don't have a referee, by all means, you can use a professor, anyone who knows you well, who has had experience of your work ethic, basically.
Yeah.
And you can qualify, and you can say, professor something, university tutor, or family friend, or something like that. We can put two and two together. No experience, we've filled in on the referee. We're not stupid. So also coming from the floor is a couple of questions about having a PhD. This is the classic question, and we should be nice and positive about it, shouldn't we, Keely?
Yes.
Do you want to do the spiel, or shall I?
You go for it this
time. Okay. I would always advise that you only do further study for the love of further study. You don't do further study for the sake of getting a job. It's a slow and expensive way of getting a job. But doing that further study, you do gain any number of skills. A PhD is somebody who has a great deal of stick-to-itiveness. There's someone who's stuck with a tough program for a long time, and they've had to employ a lot of research skills and self-motivational skills. So there's a lot to be said in favor of a PhD. There are some negative stereotypes around PhDs, that you will expect more money and more seniority straight out of the gates, to which you can get stuffed, and that you will want to continue to publish, which similarly, as an employer, you're not publishing my IP. I'm not going to argue about it. So positives and negatives, I would simply say, if you are doing a PhD, network your ass off, and then it'll never harm you.
And as well, put in your cover letter. If I'm looking and seeing a PhD and going, oh, there's no way you're going to stay here. Tell me why you will. Tell me why. Yes, I've done the study, but I also I want to work in a laboratory, and that's the biggest thing I'll sort of see when somebody's done further study is I actually prefer to be in a laboratory, which means you don't want to go into academia. You're not going to sort of go searching for that kind of career. Yeah. So put it in your cover letter. Let me know why you've studied and why now you want to come and work in a job that I might see as, well, you can go much further than this, or I expect you to go into an academic role. You tell us why you want to work in a laboratory, and then we'll see why. It does.
And jobs are all about fit. It might simply be that if you've got a PhD, you're not a good fit for a particular job, right? But you will be a better fit for other jobs. So, gains and losses.
Jasmine, just to continue on with your question there, it's not that a PhD is necessarily overkill and not necessary. I think the point is that, you want to be following a particular career path that's probably more academic focused if you pursue a PhD. But if you wanted to work in industry with your chemistry degree, you have a much higher chance of getting into industry with an honors, like a Bachelor of Science honors, than you would do as a PhD. I hope that answers it for you there. Yeah,
but I think it's really critical to remember your resume applies when the person doesn't know who the hell you are. if you build your network, you find your opportunity through your network and you approach it through your network, your resume doesn't matter. They're looking at you, not the piece of paper. And then you're able to demonstrate that you're a good fit. Somebody's quickly asked about if their referee has personal phone number and email, does that count against them? I wouldn't have thought so. Why would it? I mean, everybody moves around in the world. Why would it make a difference?
No, I prefer a mobile because I'm more likely to get hold of them. If you've got a, I'm plumbing cold, for example, it's more likely that they're away from the desk. So a mobile is much easier for us personally.
I always verify the reference though. So if it is a personal mobile, that would be a verification to a work email or LinkedIn. If LinkedIn can show me the history where the two have worked together and I can get a message from LinkedIn that they are who I spoke to for that reference, then that's how I would look at it. But yeah, mobile number is usually the preferred method of contact these days.
Yeah. Now we've also got one other question. What is something that people do wrong when applying for jobs but aren't immediately available for hire? As example, they're currently 4 months off from finishing their degree and want to get a head start on applying for grad jobs. Nothing wrong with that. Maybe for Patricia it would be a problem because you probably need a person now.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but there's nothing wrong with it's funny, I've been sort of phoning people up who are applying for a sample prep job, for example, which is a labouring job, but they're at university. But what I've been doing is phoning them up and saying, look, you're still at uni, you can't work full time, you're probably not going to want to work full time in this anyway, but when you finish your chemistry degree, give me a call and I'll see if we've got anything available. I've had a chat with that person. I like the person. I've obviously liked the resume, but don't sort of put yourself off applying for jobs because if we like the look of your resume, sometimes we'll give you a ring and just say, call me back in 3 months' time. Because, genuinely, it's I like the person, I like the resume. We'll try again later. But mine is definitely more, apply at the time when the job is there. But there's nothing wrong with trying to get hold of somebody. And it's networking, like Dave said, network your butt off.
Sorry.
And it is networking. It's and the more you speak to people and the more people go, wow, you seem a really good fit for our company, the more likely they are when you phone back in 3 or 4 months' time. I'll promise you I won't remember your name because I speak to so many people per week, but you can say, hey, you phone me up, blah blah blah, and I've finished my degree now, and I'll say, right, send your resume through again and see what I can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, Keely, you're in recruitment. A really good candidate is like a gold nugget, right? So even if they don't fit this job, you're keeping them in mind for what other job can I put them into?
100%. Pat's had a few of those calls for me over the years. But yeah, we'll reverse market people. If we've got a really good skill set, we will call and work proactively for someone on their behalf and speak to all of the clients that we work with in the industry and speak to them about the skill set that's available at this point in time. So it never hurts, if you're looking at an advertisement through a recruitment agency and it's, you don't tick all of the boxes, make sure you still apply because we're looking after so many similar roles that you could potentially tick all of the boxes for the other job that we have. And we in a recruitment agency, all of the applications come into what we call a database. And then that database is a tool for us that we then search based on skill sets that we're looking for. So oftentimes you'll get wrong about a job that you haven't even applied for just because your resume is sitting there in our database.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's start moving towards getting closer to the interview itself. Okay. So turning up for the interview. What are the what's the most common mistake?
Be late. Yeah, unless you've got a really, really, really good reason. I mean, if it's there's thunder and lightning and I know the traffic's horrendous. Then yeah, but you've got to have a really good reason and come in and apologize as well. Just walking in and sitting down and, well, I'm late, never mind. If you are late, if you've mistimed it, and gosh, I've done that before, apologize and say, I shouldn't be late, I'm really sorry. Don't just sort of walk in and say, I'm going to bluff this out because that will go against you.
I think with that one too, don't have the expectation that you're going to interview right then and there. Still making sure that the interviewer actually has time now that you've been so late. I think that shows respect level as well. It goes a long way. Usually they'll make time for you, but the fact that you offer, I'm really sorry, do you actually have time now to meet with me? If you don't, I can come back at another time. And, just that respect piece there for their time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And arriving for an interview, and it's funny, one of my colleagues said, I don't want you to tell people who are coming for jobs this because it is our little secret. But when you are sat in reception, we will always ask our receptionist, what did you think of that person? So if you are particularly rude to a receptionist, if you are inappropriate in any way, shape or form, and I will say receptionist with usually female, simply because of the nature of the job. So if you come in, be polite, be respectful. Just be aware you are being watched, you are being judged as soon as you walk in our door.
Well, even before you walk in. I mean, I love the story. It may be apocryphal about the guy who was waiting for a parking spot. Just as he's about to pull in, somebody steals his spot and gives him the finger and goes in the building. So he parks elsewhere, goes inside and finds that the guy who gave him the finger was the guy he's about to interview for a job.
Yep. Heard that one.
Again, could be apocryphal, who knows? But, wow, you can just imagine.
And just be aware of what you're doing in reception as well. I think, I've seen it all, people brushing their hair in reception. The toilets are right beside our reception. It just isn't the right look and feel. I mean, you are there on display as soon as you walk in those doors. So just be mindful of that as well.
Yeah. I've got to say, my technique back when I was still applying for jobs, I would not only have a brief but friendly chat with the reception, but I would express the same eagerness to the receptionist. I'm really keen on this job. I hope I do well today, right? So that if any, maybe nothing will be said, maybe something positive will be said. But
no, it does. Somebody says, when the receptionist says to me, "Oh yeah, they were really friendly," and I was chatting away with them. They seem really nice. That's more likely to get you a job, because then we can see you as a company fit. Because guess what? We like friendly people. We like people who'll have a chat. You don't have to. If you're really nervous and you sat there in your bundle of nerves and all you're doing is going like this, don't worry about it. We don't expect anything else. But certainly, if you were, it would be the inappropriateness that would impact your ability to carry on.
So let's stick with nerves for a minute. How bad is nerves in an interview? How badly does it affect an interview?
I think if you have any nervous habits, just to try to be mindful of them, because again, you are being watched. So, chewing your fingernails during the interview isn't a great look, and picking under your nails.
Oh, I hate that.
Oh, it's actually, it's disgusting. But just to have that happening during the interview, it's really distracting for the interviewer, for one.
Yeah, picking pimples and investigating. That's bad. That's bad.
Yeah. So just if you have any nervous habits, please just try to work on ways that you're not using, having those happening during an interview, work on that.
But it is worth mentioning that as professional recruiters, we try and look past the nerves, right? We know that once you've got the job, you're not going to be nervous. So we're trying to look past the nerves to who is the person underneath. I've got to say, my most memorable nerves was a girl who was fluttering like a leaf in the interview.
Shaking,
and I stopped the interview. I brought her a cup of tea, asked her to take a few quiet minutes to settle and then recommence, just because as I said to her, I know you're going to be okay. I don't care about your nerves, but let's try and work past them so that you can do as well as possible. So, but yeah, man, I mean, she was vibrating.
And practice as well. If you haven't done an interview for years because you've never done an interview, you might have, people usually get part-time jobs through a friend, and you turn up and you turn up at whatever it is and they go, oh yeah, we'll hire you. That's casual jobs, part-time jobs. If you've never done a professional interview before, Google it. Just keep Googling and seeing, but practice as well. Get a friend, get mum, dad, whatever, anybody, and just practice what you're going to say, look at what an interview will be about, and just sort of practice, and certainly don't lie, but just do as much as you can to practice how you're going to be, what you're going to say, etc. But we don't expect you to be fluent and just sit there comfortably. Somebody who's sort of overconfident is, depending on what level of job, will sometimes be a bit of a question mark. Are they going to fit in, or are they going to be, this overconfidence will lead to arrogance.
Well, I mean, do you, am I the only one? If I have a particularly arrogant, and I'm going to say young man, because it's always a young man, and he's got that irritating level of arrogance, I will deliberately provoke him to see if I can make him angry. And the second he shows anger, the interview is over.
Yeah.
Because you just can't have that in your workplace. You just can't have that, so you got to watch it.
I had one very, very memorable, and I don't know whether it was either nerves or a slight arrogance, but we'll call it nerves. But I don't. And it was a young gentleman, and he sort of followed myself and the manager into the room, and where our conference room is, lab is straight ahead. There was a bit of hilarity going on in the lab, which is unusual. So there was a bit of loud voices, a bit of laughing, a bit of sort of hilarity. And as he followed us in the room, he actually said, "They sound like chattering monkeys." I know, that's what we did. Apart from we didn't gasp at him. But that interview lasted all of 2 minutes, and he was back at the door. So, like I said, whether he thought he was being funny and using brevity, or it was a nervous thing, but to call anybody chattering monkeys when these are going to be your work colleagues, that one really stuck out, because it was like, wow, I've never seen somebody kill an interview like that.
I've done it. I've killed an interview as a candidate.
You didn't say
I still remember this with horror. It was my white whale of a job. It was the job I wanted so badly. And I had moved heaven and earth just to get the interview. The guy didn't want to interview me, and I'd moved heaven and earth just to get the interview. His name, and I'm afraid to say there's no way I can avoid saying his name. His name was Jeremy Thomas. Jeremy, if you're out there ever listening, I'm sorry. And I sat there in the and I was nervous as hell. This was the job that I was going to make my career. And I sat out there, Jeremy Thomas, Jeremy Thomas, Jeremy Thomas. I walked through the door, stuck out my hand and said, "John." Now, not only is it bad enough that I got his name wrong, but John Thomas is a euphemism for a man's appendage. And he would have been teased with that for his whole life.
As soon as you said the last name was Thomas, I knew where you were going with that one. Oh my goodness!
That interview was like I could have just hung my head and said, "I'm sorry." Right?
Oh no!
Oh, that was shocking. Oh, and I did the arrogance thing once too when I was very, very young. They wanted me to start on a particular date. I wasn't available for another 3 weeks, and I said, "I'm worth waiting for." Deadpan. He said, "That remains to be seen."
Oh dear.
Oh, shocking. What about this?
Oh yeah, that was another one. Somebody in an interview was actually looking on the phone. So the HR said,
answer the calls in an interview. Just don't do it.
Put it on silent. Get it in your pocket.
Oh.
Yeah, silence it, exactly.
I've got to say, these days it is my millennial marker. If I see a phone in an interview, they don't get the job.
Yeah. Put it away. It should not be on the table. There's no reason, because you are here in an interview with a person. You're not going to answer it. You're not going to look at it. You're not going to check your messages. Why put it on the table? Why put it front and center and say, this is just as important to me as you are? Because you've just lost your interview.
Yeah.
So put it in your pocket. If you haven't put it in your bag, give it to the receptionist. Yeah, she'll look after it.
Just don't bring very much to an interview. I think that's a big mistake as well. People bring so many things with them, but really it's just you and the interviewer. You don't need to bring anything else unless they've asked you to bring some documentation. And it's, even, if somebody puts their clunky keys onto the table, whatever your key ring might be, it's it's things that don't need to be displayed out to the interviewer. So just bring as little as possible with you.
And I didn't do the interview, but it's probably not something that would occur. I mean, we're looking at a younger generation now, so I simply hope it wouldn't. But it was a guy who came in for a health and safety job, and there was a male manager and a female safety officer who he would have been replacing. And he spent the whole interview treating her like she was inconsequential to the whole meeting, talking to the guy, almost belittling her. And like I say, I doubt very much, Dave, you're doing that because you can see it in a certain generation that it would exist. Probably doesn't happen as much, but just be aware of talking to everybody in the room. Don't sort of focus on one person. And if you're, sort of a guy, I'm going to focus on a guy, not a female, that will be really frowned upon because it's something that's really important. Ironically, this guy keeps asking for jobs. He forever writes to me and asks, I'm at the end of a contract if you've got any health and safety jobs. And no. And now his son is writing to me as well for health and safety jobs because his dad said, right, and I just go, wow, I don't like your dad, so you might be different, but I'm not going to risk it. So he's just thwarted his son's attempts at getting a job with ALS as well. Simply because of his attitude.
History can play a part in this. I once had one of my school bullies apply for a job with me. Through me. I was a recruitment consultant at the time, and I tell you, his resume couldn't go in the bin fast enough.
Oh yeah, we've had again somebody who was an absolute nightmare at work, and again that person's son, unfortunately, poor thing, he's probably might be a really decent lad, but we're not going to. If the person who left thought they had a good impression with us and thought we really liked them, no. So it does, unfortunately. Somebody came in for an interview. It was a sample prep job. It was a simple one, but his dad had brought him to work, and I already had a conversation with this young lad that he can ride to work and cycle and all this. Thought he was lovely. His dad was parked in somebody's spot, so one of the managers went and knocked on the window. And he starts giving heaps of abuse. Yeah, I know. So unfortunately, we couldn't take this young lad on, even though he interviewed well, because what's his dad going to be like if we're not giving him hours, or if he flies off the handle because he's parked in the wrong spot?
Yeah,
and goes, hey.
Yeah, I've had that.
Yeah, so
told me when she didn't get the job.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
rough.
just that is a really bad move. I've had sort of somebody's wife phoning up about a job, or the husband phoning up, and again it's like no, it's a bit of a no, and certainly mum and dad phoning up, definitely not.
Especially you one about that they didn't get the job. I said they were the second choice. They did really well.
Yeah, but it's no, don't have mum and dad involved in anything. Very rarely I'd be sympathetic to somebody phoning up for their son or whatever, but for a university, I would expect you to be stood on your own 2 feet, and I think you all would be anyway. Kind of a foregone. It has happened.
Reminded me of
Sorry?
A lab position we interviewed in the laboratory. You were talking about bringing extra stuff into the lab. They pulled out of their bag a red apple and started eating it in the lab.
Bit of overconfidence there. Yeah, don't eat in an interview.
I don't get shocked anymore, honestly. It just all happens in interviews now. And I was just going to say in the contacts as well, I find it highly inappropriate when somebody sends me a message over WhatsApp or sends me an SMS in general. I just think, if there's a phone number that's present, it's not for you to text, it's for you to call. And it puts me off anytime I receive an SMS or a WhatsApp especially. And I actually respond to say it's inappropriate that you're contacting me in this manner, because it's my work phone is my personal phone as well. So it's really annoying when I'm getting these messages outside of work hours, or somebody's trying to call me on a weekend as well. I think that's another point, just be mindful of what the working hours are, so that when you're following up on an application, you're not actually putting people in a position, be mindful and respectful of the working hours.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Has that ever extended
Bit of a rant on my part. Sorry, this has got me all
no. Has that ever extended to an inappropriate comment?
Oh, there's been over the years, and not myself, but others that I've worked with have even received inappropriate pictures as well. So yeah, there's a lot of things that happens in the recruitment world.
Yeah, we discussed one before this started that I won't discuss on camera, but yeah, wildly inappropriate judgment.
Mhm.
So,
I think that's the big sort of thing from all of this is self-awareness is a huge yay or nay for an interview. You've got to be self-aware when it comes to you walking in the door, making the phone call, doing your resume, cover letter. Have a self-awareness. Take a good look at yourself and ask other people and say, what impression do I give you when you first meet me? Oh, you're very loud, or
now that's a fair point. How often do people ask you for feedback after an interview?
Very rarely after an interview. I usually get it if we get a resume through and then, we send a rejection email. I've had them from there, but very rarely from interviews, I think.
Because I think it's a great idea to call and say, is there anything I could have done better?
Yeah, what have I done wrong? Yeah. And we will sometimes we will say it was just that there was nothing wrong with what you did, but the other person was just that little bit better for whatever reason, whether it was a company fit, whether it was qualifications, etc. So yeah, it's I don't sort of recall any, I might have phoned somebody up and said, you haven't got the job, but it was the other person. Sometimes I'll be not cruel to be kind, but sometimes I will be a bit sort of not wanting to get into maybe a confrontational conversation. So you say, no, you were second choice, like you say, Dave, you were second on the list, but somebody else just picked you to the post. So
yeah.
yeah.
I will say sometimes I see resumes, cover letters that are so bad, I call them up and say, would you like some constructive criticism?
Yeah.
I don't want to freely offer it. I don't want to impose it on them, but I do want to see, would you like some constructive criticism? Because you want them to do well, right? This is the thing people don't understand. It's not as if we're sitting here in high judgment saying, no. We're saying we want you to be good. We want the first person through the door to be great so that we can employ them and stop this malarkey.
And we want them to stay around, yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And the other thing as well, I thought we kind of covered resumes, interviews, is that first phone call. So when you put your resume through and you get a call, that to me, that's my second impression, which is sometimes the killer and the thanks but no thanks. Unenthusiasm is so frustrating. I want you to be enthusiastic. Not answering your phone and not calling back is another really big one, because everyone's nodding here because it is a time waster for us. So if you are looking for work, A, have a message bank that works, B, check your messages, and C, phone back. If you really want the job, call back.
From somewhere quiet.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And don't call from the car on Bluetooth hands-free. I don't like that. If I catch you while you're on Bluetooth hands-free, that's different. But if you're ringing back and you know who has called you, I think that's not the right message to send either. You should be, in a place that you can have a conversation.
Quiet room, no distractions.
Yes.
Yeah.
No distractions.
Yeah.
Somebody just asked, is it a killer if you miss the call but call back with an apology? No, of course. We don't.
That's fine.
4 hours available to us.
Yeah.
Call back. She's cool.
No. And like I said, that first phone call is when we are giving you your resume is good. So cover letter, resume, tick tick. Now it's you're sort of on it. So just make sure you don't have to give all the right answers. We don't expect that, but certainly a level of enthusiasm that makes me go, wow. And they're the ones who I say, well, we haven't got a job for you at the moment, but phone me back in 3 months' time. So I'll make a real snap judgment on somebody from the personality that's coming across on a phone, and it really does show. It really, you can really tell. If you're a bit nervous, that's fine. If you're a little bit quiet, that's fine. But your personality kind of comes across, and that's when we go, wow, this person, I really want to get this person in. And it's very rarely been wrong, very, very rarely.
once last year, I had somebody apply and they sent me a short video with their application. So they did all the traditional stuff and they sent me a short video, and I was as impressed as hell. That really stood out. You know, I mean, the funny thing about applications is, of course, you can stand out for good or you can stand out for ill. I had one a couple of years ago where a guy stood and I called him up and I said, I had to call you. I had to know whether you are the best employee I've ever seen or a complete bullshit artist, and I can't tell from your resume. You know, but it was just this amazing resume that I had to call this man. Turns out he was wildly inappropriate for the role, but so I'm still glad I called. So
yeah, I think if you're putting in your resume, you know, I'm really enthusiastic about this role. I really, you know, this is my career. That's got to come across as well, because if it doesn't, it's like, well, which bit's lying then? And just make sure you're getting up early in the morning. I do actually phone people up and they, you know, they just got out of bed. Might be 9:30. That's acceptable. And it's also acceptable to say, look, you know, you've woke me up. Can I call you back in about half an hour? I'd be happy with that, because I don't know, put you on the spot. You sort of, you tell us when you're going to be at your best, and we're quite happy to accommodate that, as long as you do call us back. If you sort of forget, then you're back out. But yeah, feedback as well. You know, on resumes, people have sent resumes through, got the rejection. As long as I've got time, I'll say, yeah, we'll, you know, have a look. And again, it might be there's nothing wrong. There was just somebody else better. It's luck of the draw.
Yeah.
I think as graduates, you know, a lot of the people on this call, you're probably applying for a lot of jobs, because it's kind of that, you know, throw as many resumes out there and see which ones can stick. But where that can be a problem is when you do get the callbacks from the employers, and if you don't remember what job that you've applied for and you're asking a lot of extra questions. So I don't know what the best combat of that is, but, you know, when you're applying for each job, my suggestion would be to look at the website at the same time, so that you know what the company's about. So when you do get a call and start to discuss the role a little bit further, that you've got an idea of what the role might entail or what the company does. That's a real turnoff for me as well, when they don't have, you know, when I'm speaking to someone, they have no idea what I've applied for.
Yeah, and I think it shows, if somebody says, oh, I've applied for loads of jobs, do you really want to work for us then, or are you just scattering resumes?
Yeah, look, a scattergun just is not a great strategy.
Yeah.
It's so much better to do a handful of really good quality applications backed by good research and good networking. Far more
and the job you want. Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. And I've been asked a question about online interviews. I guess for me, the obvious one is make sure that you're dealing with a good quality connection. Right. You don't want to have a whole lot of can you hear me, or pixelation. And the other one is, if you're doing it on your phone, bloody well charge your phone.
Yeah.
I literally had one, the interviewee got up recently and they moved 7 times during the interview on their phone, moved from room to room 7 times in the interview, including once to fetch their charger.
Oh my goodness.
Distracted,
exactly.
Yeah.
You know, and I was joined by a colleague, and at the end of the call, the colleague said, did they even want this job? That was their first comment.
I think too, just make sure that you let anybody that could be coming into your home know that you're going to be on an online interview, because the amount of times that the camera's been faced in a way that you kept seeing people walking in behind, it's really distracting. And that goes for pets as well. If you can keep the pets maybe out of the room that you're interviewing, it just helps the flow of the interview a bit better as well. But yeah, that's a big one. And whatever's behind you, just remember that the person can see that. You put some kind of a filter onto the background, but just to be safe, just try to find as neutral a position as possible.
I had the glorious one the other day. Toddler 1 comes in, toddler 2 comes in, toddler comes in and ushers 2 toddlers out of the room.
Those are quite cute though. I'm okay with that one.
No, absolutely. It was adorable. I will say the ones where you're interviewing and their underwear is hanging in the background of the shot.
That uncomfortable thing again. I don't think I've ever done an online interview. I don't think we've ever got to it. Even during COVID, we've always been in a position of being able to, get the person in. So,
us eastern states, what is it, 180 days of lockdown in Victoria now? So,
gosh.
And New South Wales is, I don't know when they're going to get out. It's horrible.
Yeah. So, we've had a delightful conversation this evening. Have any, we're coming up to time. I just want to say there was a couple of people, one who mentioned before that they've been out of the work for a while and they're looking to break back in again. Feel free to reach out to us, any of us here. We may be able to help you. Depends on what state you're in. We may be able to help you. And there was something else. Somebody who was a recent immigrant to Australia, I think it was. Look, I guess the answer to that is your circumstances are your circumstances. You just got to make the best of what you do have and don't worry about what you don't. And again, networking can paper over a heck of a lot of cracks because it's not about the resume, it's about the person. And we at RACI, all of us here, we actively want to help you. You only need to reach out so that we can help you. I think it's really important. So, Patricia, Kelly, what else would you like to say about when it all goes wrong? I think we've had some fun tonight. I will say,
I can't think of anything else really. It's just, if it does go wrong, and you walk to the car and you go, oh, is it worth a phone call? I mean, depending on what it was, if he really gave a bad impression, but I've done it myself. I've been for an interview for a job and I gave a really bad impression, and I know I did. And I actually sort of emailed afterwards, but never heard back. So it was a case of, no, that first impression stuck. So it is.
I've frozen in an interview. I will never forget. I prepared for the interview. I was ready for the interview. I was a little bit nervous, but okay nervous. And then they said, can you tell us how HPLC or something like that works? I said, yes, I can. May I use the whiteboard? And I stood up, got to the whiteboard, and a cold flush went through me and I went blank.
Oh dear.
And all I could do was turn back to them and be honest and say, look, I stepped up to this awfully confidently, but suddenly nerves have got the best of me and I've gone blank. So
did you get the job?
No. I walked out with my head held high. And I mean, it's worth saying, we've probably all walked out of interviews where we've said, thank you, this is not the right job for me. That's not a bad thing, right? You save everybody wasting time.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it was good that you were honest in that situation, but I think you have to be careful the amount of times that people overshare, like way too much information. I don't need to know all of your circumstances, and especially if those circumstances could lean in a direction that I don't hire you, best not to share all the little details, So I think that one's a trap that a lot of people get stuck in is really sharing way too much information, and also talking in a poor way around your past employer. That one's a big one for me. Just come up with a diplomatic way of talking about why it didn't work out in your last employment.
Yeah. No, look, relentless positivity. You've got to be positive about everything. Something didn't go right, but I learned something great from it. Oh yeah,
negativity in an interview, no matter how much it did sort of hurt or it did affect you, we will put a big question mark on how much of that was you rather than them. And no matter how, you might say, oh, my boss was absolutely horrible. It might have been horrible, but it puts that question mark in our head. How much of that was you rather than them? There may be none, but you planted that seed. So like Dave said then, it just wasn't the last company. Because we will say, why did you leave the last company? But put as positive a spin on it as you can. It just wasn't for me, or I felt it was the time to move on rather than waste their time with further training. I thought I'd, try for other jobs, etc.
Yeah, even if you hadn't been there that long, it just turned out it wasn't the right fit for me.
Yeah.
Or I wasn't the right fit for the job, might be another way of saying it, right?
Yeah. Yeah, don't bag people out. It's big no.
Yeah. I think similarly, your star stories, you've got to be very careful between the surface layer of your star story and the subtext of your star story, because that can really screw the pooch. You know, what does it say about your behaviors underneath it all? And we've all heard my anecdote in the past about the arrogant guy who he said in his star story that his team had been asked to model climate change in 3 different scenarios. They had wanted to do 0, middling, and high. And he said, quote unquote, there is absolutely no point in modeling 0 climate change. We all know that it's a fact. So I made them, quote unquote, do middle, high, and extreme, and we got a really good mark. And he was so proud of that story. And afterwards I said to him, I got 2 messages out of that. Number one, you're so intellectually arrogant that you're not willing to consider a position that's different to yours. And number 2, that you forced your view on the rest of your team, regardless of what they thought. Neither of those are a good thing. He was mad at me. And then I went to say, yeah, and aggression also. Fortunately, that was a mock interview, that one.
Wow.
But yeah. So those the subtext of star stories can be critical.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Can I? Yeah, I just saw what Sandra had written on the side there. How is networking possible for uni students during this COVID time? I know it's tough at the moment, but something that happened to me recently was a young graduate had approached me on LinkedIn. And they specifically said for that reason that they hadn't been able to network and they were really hoping to pick my brains and have a conversation with me. And so locked in some time with me. And because I hadn't been asked it before and it was kind of a new thing, I openly met with them over a Teams meeting. We had a chat and that was a bit of networking and I gave a little bit of advice and so on. So I think use your LinkedIn in those situations is a really good way of approaching it. You may not get everyone to meet with you that way, but it might be more valuable than going to a networking event anyways, because you wouldn't have very much one-on-one time when you went to the networking event anyhow. So it might be something to try.
Yeah.
And Dave here as well, because I've just had somebody from RACI student who's reached out, and that was through yourself. I can't remember, her name is Naireen. Yeah. So she's written to me. We, again, met on Teams. I changed a cover letter for her. A cover letter was too long, so I've sort of culled all that for her. Now she's applied for 3 jobs at ALS in Sydney, and I forwarded her resume on to the hiring manager, not the hiring manager, HR in Sydney. But I've also said, I've spoken to this person. Really, I liked her entrepreneurial spirit. Again, in COVID, her current job wasn't working. She was looking at something else. Lovely person. So she's networked already. She's kind of got to the front of that queue. Whether it gets a job is another matter. It depends on, what her resume looks like to that hiring manager over there. But she's certainly, just by reaching out, she's sort of got that network. She's got to the front of the queue, and simple as that. So,
absolutely.
That's
Number 1, next week, if you are away, there is the WA Careers Fair with RACI. The following week is our monthly online networking event, Camaraderie, which is a great place to build your network. Number 3, we have 2 lectures here on our recorded video series all about how to use LinkedIn for effective networking. And number 4, you've always got us. You can always reach out to the RACI mentoring at mentoring@raci.org.au, and we will help you build your network. So lots of ways. I would actually say that in many ways, networking has improved during the COVID period because everybody has gone online. Everybody is much more reachable than they ever were before.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, thank you so much. This has been fun.
Yeah.
In the middle, I got really rolled up though, didn't I? Myself telling all these stories. It got me all sorry.
I love this. Afsha wrote this for me, and I think she captured this really well. She said, the best lesson of all on how not to get the job is to give up. It is so easy to feel despondent, rejected, and to take things personally. But there is a job out there for you. All of you have the technical and interpersonal skills to succeed. So stay focused, stay positive, and your determination will pay off.
Yeah, Absolutely.
I think she captured that very well. Okay, I'll do my wrap up and we'll finish for the evening. Here we go. Tonight has been another event as part of the RACI Careers Development Program. Through webinars, networking events, mentoring lectures and workshops, the RACI Careers Development Program aims to help graduating students get the best possible start in their careers. Our upcoming events include next week, there is a Careers in Science in Communication event here on Careers Thursday. There's also the WA Careers Fair. Following week is Camaraderie Online Networking. Next month, we're going to do a workshop rather than a webinar on really great applications. And the following month, we'll do a workshop on really great interviews. The recording of this event will be uploaded to the RACI Careers Development YouTube channel over the next few days, as well as to the RACI Careers site at www.raci.org.au. In the meantime, our sincere thanks to Patricia and Keely for taking the time to be here tonight. It's been great.
It was fun. Thank you for the invite.
Enjoyed it. Thank you.
Cheers.